The classroom on the third floor of the Galactic Academy's main building was filled with students from across the known universe. Blue-skinned Vryn sat beside crystalline Talaxir, while the massive Kreth took up 2 seats each with their large frames. In the back corner, near the window overlooking the purple gardens, sat Park Ji-woo. She was the only human in the Advanced Diplomatic Studies program, and she wore full combat armor to every single class. The armor was matte black, modified to look less threatening than military standard issue, but anyone with eyes could see it was built for war. The chest plate bore scratches from years of use. The shoulder guards had been repaired multiple times. Ji-woo sat quietly, her helmet resting on the desk beside her datapad, taking notes as Professor Velthara lectured about building peaceful relationships between different species. Velthara was a Talaxir, her body made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls when she moved. She had been teaching at the Academy for 30 years and was considered one of the finest minds in interstellar diplomacy. Today, however, she kept glancing at Ji-woo with an expression that looked almost like concern, though it was hard to read emotions on a crystalline face. The lecture continued for another 20 minutes before Velthara finally stopped mid-sentence. She turned to face Ji-woo directly, her crystal body shifting colors from calm blue to uncertain yellow. "Miss Park," Velthara said, her voice like wind chimes in a breeze. "I must address something that has been brought to my attention by several students." "Your armor." Ji-woo looked up from her notes. Her face showed nothing. No surprise or anger or fear. Just blank attention. "Yes, Professor?" Ji-woo said. "Several students have expressed discomfort with your choice to wear military armor to class," Velthara continued. "The Academy prides itself on being a place of peaceful learning. Your attire sends a message that contradicts our values of trust and openness among species." A large Kreth student named Rix Allen raised one of his 4 arms. His skin was gray and thick like stone, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder when he spoke. "It makes me uncomfortable, Professor. We come here to learn peace, but she dresses for war every single day. How can we trust her? How can we feel safe?" A few other students murmured agreement. A Vryn named Cora, whose people resembled tall, graceful cats with luminescent fur, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. A scholarly Talaxir named Takesh kept his eyes on his datapad, refusing to join the conversation. Ji-woo remained still, her hands flat on the desk. "The armor helps me feel secure," she said quietly. "Humans have reasons for protective gear." "But this is the Academy," Velthara said, her tone gentle but firm. "No one here wishes you harm. We are all students and teachers seeking knowledge together. Your armor suggests you do not trust us, that you see us as threats rather than colleagues." "I never said anyone was a threat," Ji-woo replied. Her voice stayed level, empty of emotion. "I simply feel more comfortable with the armor on." Rix Allen made a huffing sound through his breathing slits. "Comfortable? How do you think we feel? My people have been at peace for 200 years. We left our warrior ways behind, but you sit there every day reminding us of violence and war." The irony of his words hung in the air, though no one seemed to notice it except Takesh, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Velthara's color shifted to orange, the Talaxir equivalent of determination. "Miss Park, I'm going to have to insist. Either you remove the armor and dress like the other students, or I will have no choice but to place you on academic probation. The dress code is clear. All students must wear appropriate civilian attire that promotes an atmosphere of peace and academic focus." Ji-woo sat perfectly still for a long moment. 43 students watched her. Some looked curious, some looked satisfied like they had won something. Cora looked worried, her luminescent fur dimming slightly. "You want me to remove my armor?" Ji-woo said. It was not a question. "I believe it would benefit everyone," Velthara said. "Show us that you trust your fellow students. Show us that you belong here in this place of learning, not on a battlefield." Ji-woo looked down at her hands. They were steady, not shaking at all. She had very good control over her body, the kind that came from years of training or years of trauma, or perhaps both. "All right," she said finally. She stood up slowly. The armor made soft mechanical sounds as she moved. Her fingers found the release catches on the shoulder guards first. They came away with a soft click. She set them on the desk carefully, precisely. Then the chest plate, which separated into 2 pieces front and back. More clicks. More mechanical whispers. The arm guards next, each one individually removed and placed on the growing pile. The leg protection last unstrapped and set aside. The whole process took about 3 minutes. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft clanking of armor pieces being removed and the distant hum of the Academy's climate control system. When Jiwoo finished, she stood in a simple black tank top and tactical pants. Her boots were the only piece of military gear she kept on. She was thin, but her muscles were clearly defined. Her arms showed the kind of strength that came from hard use. Not gym workouts, but it was not her muscles that made the classroom fall into complete, stunned silence. It was her scars. Her left shoulder bore a massive burn scar, the skin twisted and discolored, melted into shapes that looked almost like waves frozen in time. Plasma burn. Anyone with military knowledge would recognize it immediately. Her right arm had 3 parallel lines running from shoulder to elbow, deep grooves in the skin that could only have been made by claws, large claws, the kind that Vryn war beasts had. Her torso, visible because of the tank top, was a map of violence. Dozens of smaller scars, circular puncture wounds, a long surgical scar running down her left side that looked like it had been done in a hurry without much care for cosmetics. And on her neck, just barely visible above the collar of her tank top, a thin white line where something very sharp had come very close to cutting something vital. Jiwoo sat back down. She picked up her data pad. She opened her notes to the correct page. She looked at Professor Velthara with the same blank expression she had worn before. "Is this more comfortable for everyone?" she asked. Her voice was steady, calm, like she had not just revealed a history of violence written on her own skin. Like she had not just shown them proof of things that should not have happened. Velthara stood frozen, her crystal body flickering through colors too fast to identify. Rix Allen had gone pale, his gray skin turning almost white. Cora made a small distressed sound, her hand covering her mouth. Takesh stared at Jiwoo with something that looked like recognition and horror mixed together. Velthara started, then stopped. Let us continue the lecture." But her voice shook and her colors kept shifting. She turned back to the display board and tried to continue talking about building peaceful coalitions between species who had never met before. She stumbled over her words. She repeated herself. She kept glancing back at Jiwoo, who sat calmly taking notes like nothing had changed. The other students could not concentrate. They kept stealing glances at the human in the back corner, at the scars that covered her visible skin, at the armor piled on her desk like discarded safety, at the way she held her data pad with steady hands that must have done terrible things or had terrible things done near them. The lecture limped to its conclusion 30 minutes later. Students filed out quickly, quietly, like they were leaving a funeral. Jiwoo began putting her armor back on with the same methodical precision she had used to remove it. Her data pad chimed. A message from an unknown sender. Just 4 words and a signature. "Library. After class, please." Takesh. Jiwoo looked at the message for a long moment. Then she finished securing her armor and headed toward the door. The Academy library was built into the side of a mountain, with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling and looked out over the valley below. Jiwoo found Takesh in the archive section, surrounded by old data crystals and holographic displays showing documents that looked like they had not been accessed in years. He was a Talxier like Professor Velthara, but younger, his crystal body a deep green instead of her rainbow shimmer. Takesh looked up when Jiwoo approached. His crystalline face could not make human expressions, but his body language showed nervousness. He kept shifting his weight from one side to the other. "Thank you for coming," Takesh said. His voice was quieter than Velthara's, less like wind chimes and more like the soft clink of glass touching glass. "I know we have never spoken before. I am sorry for that. I am sorry for many things after today." Jiwoo stood with her arms crossed. She had put her armor back on after class, every piece locked into place. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice was not rude, just direct. "To ask if you would tell me what happened to you," Takesh said. "But more than that, to show you something I found, something that I think explains why you wear that armor, something that the Academy does not teach." He turned to one of the holographic displays and entered a long code. The display flickered and changed, showing a document marked with red security warnings. Classified. Sealed. Not for general access. "I study old wars," Takesh explained. Not because I enjoy violence, but because I believe we must understand our past to build a better future. I have been researching something called the First Contact Incident. The official records say it was a minor misunderstanding between Earth and the Galactic Council 15 years ago. A diplomatic confusion that was quickly resolved. That is what the official records say, Jiwoo said. She did not move closer to look at the display. But I found other records, Takesh continued. Military reports that were sealed. Casualty lists that were classified. Reports from Kreth commanders and Vrin mercenary companies. Reports that tell a very different story. He pulled up more documents. Lists of numbers. Images of a planet from space. Smoke rising from multiple cities. After-action reports written in Kreth military language. It was not a misunderstanding, Takesh said quietly. It was an invasion. Jiwoo was silent for a moment. Then she moved closer to the display, looking at the documents with eyes that had seen these things before, just from a different angle. Yes, she said simply. It was an invasion. Will you tell me what happened? Takesh asked. The truth, not the official story. Jiwoo looked at him for a long moment, then at the empty library around them. No one else was in this section. It was just the two of them and the ghosts of hidden history. I was 9 years old, she began, her voice flat and factual, like she was reading from a report. The Kreth Empire sent what they called an exploratory force to Earth. Humanity had just achieved faster-than-light travel. We were new, primitive in their eyes. They expected us to surrender immediately when they showed up with their warships and their war beasts. But you did not surrender, Takesh said. No, we did not surrender. Jiwoo touched one of the documents on the display, expanding it. It was a Kreth military report describing unexpected resistance in a city called Busan. This is my hometown. I lived there with my parents and my younger brother Minho. He was 6. When the first ships came, people thought it was first contact, like in the stories. We thought they came in peace. They did not come in peace, Takesh said. No. They came to take our planet. They thought we would be easy. They were wrong. Jiwoo pulled up another document, this one showing casualty numbers. 340 million humans dead over 8 months. Every human became a fighter. Children, elderly people, everyone. We had nothing compared to their technology, but we had everything to lose. She pointed to her left shoulder, to the massive burn scar visible even through the armor's undersuit where it showed at the collar. This happened in the 2nd week. Minho and I were hiding in the ruins of our apartment building. A Kreth patrol found us. They fired a plasma bolt. I covered Minho with my body. The bolt hit me instead of him. Takesh's crystal body darkened, the Talxir expression of sorrow. Jiwoo pointed to her right arm, to the 3 parallel scars. This happened in the 3rd week. A Vrin war beast found our hiding spot. I fought it with a piece of metal bar I found in the rubble. I had to protect Minho. The beast got my arm, but I got its eye. It left. You were 9 years old, Takesh said, his voice barely audible. Yes, I was 9 years old. Jiwoo touched her neck, where the thin scar was hidden by her armor. This happened after Kreth soldiers captured me. They kept me for 3 days. They wanted to know where other humans were hiding. I did not tell them. On the 3rd day, one of them put a blade to my throat to scare me. His hand slipped. Or maybe it did not slip. Human resistance fighters attacked the camp that night and got me out. She touched her side, where the long surgical scar ran under her ribs. This happened during the rescue. I was bleeding inside from the torture. They did field surgery in an abandoned hospital with no power, no anesthesia, and tools they sterilized with fire. I was awake for all of it. I had to be quiet because Kreth patrols were still searching the area. Takesh stood frozen, processing what he was hearing. And your brother, Minho? Jiwoo's face remained blank, but something changed in her eyes. Something dark and deep and full of old pain. He survived the invasion. We both did. He died 6 years ago from complications. The injuries he got during those 8 months never fully healed. His body just gave up one day. The official records say it was a minor incident, Takesh said, anger entering his voice for the first time. They say there were minimal casualties and diplomatic agreements were reached. The official records are lies, Jiwoo said flatly. 340 million humans died. Millions more were injured. Every survivor has scars. Mine are just visible on the outside. Why does the Academy teach lies? Takesh demanded. Why does the Galactic Council hide this? Because admitting the truth would be embarrassing, Jiwoo said. The Kreth Empire is a major power in the Council. The Vryn mercenary companies are used by half the species in the galaxy. Admitting they invaded a primitive species and lost would destroy their reputation. Admitting they committed atrocities against children would require justice. It is easier to revise history and call it a misunderstanding. She looked at Takesh directly. You asked why I wear armor. Now you know. I wear it because I remember what happens when I do not have protection. I wear it because my body remembers pain and my mind remembers threats. I wear it because Minho is not here to wear his, so I wear mine for both of us. Takesh was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, may I share this? The documents, the truth? Other students should know what really happened. Jiwoo closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she looked tired. I came to the academy to move forward, not to relive the past. But if you are asking my permission, yes. If people are going to judge humanity, if they are going to complain about my armor and call me paranoid, they should know what we survived. They should know what their governments hid from them. I will be careful, Takesh promised. I will share only with those who will listen and learn. Do what you think is right, Jiwoo said. She turned to leave, then stopped. Takesh, thank you for looking for the truth. Most people prefer comfortable lies. I am a scholar, Takesh said. Truth matters more than comfort. After Jiwoo left, Takesh stood alone in the archives section, surrounded by evidence of crimes that were never punished and suffering that was never acknowledged. He looked at the documents for a long time, then began making careful copies. The truth had been buried for 15 years. It was time to dig it up. Across the campus, in her small dormitory room, Jiwoo sat on her bed with her armor still on. She held a small photo in her hands, protected in a clear case. 2 children smiled in the picture, a girl of 9 and a boy of 6, taken 1 week before the ships came. Before the fire and the blood and the screaming. Before everything changed forever. I told them today, Minho, she whispered to the photo. I showed them the scars. I told someone the truth. I do not know if it will help, but I did it. The photo did not answer, but she had not expected it to. She placed it carefully on the table beside her bed, next to her helmet and her data pad. Then she finally took off the armor piece by piece and tried to sleep. She did not sleep well. She never did. But that was nothing new. The cafeteria at the Galactic Academy served food from 200 different worlds. The smell was a mixture of things that humans found pleasant and things that made Jiwoo's stomach turn. She ate alone most days, at a small table near the windows where she could see anyone approaching. Old habits from the war days when not seeing threats coming meant death. Today, however, she was not alone. Cora, the Vryn student with luminescent fur, approached her table carrying a tray of food that glowed slightly blue. Her cat-like face showed uncertainty, her ears flat against her head in a gesture that meant distress in her species. May I sit? Cora asked quietly. Jiwoo gestured to the empty chair. She did not smile, but she did not refuse. Cora sat down, then did not touch her food. She stared at her tray like it held answers to difficult questions. Finally, she spoke. I have been researching. After what happened in class, after seeing your scars, Takesh shared some documents with me, military records from 15 years ago. And? Jiwoo asked, still eating her simple meal of rice and vegetables. My clan, Cora said, her voice barely a whisper. My family's mercenary company. We lease war beasts to other species for military contracts. 15 years ago, we had a contract with the Kreth Empire for an operation on a planet called Earth. Jiwoo stopped eating. She set down her utensils carefully, precisely. I see. The marks on your arm, Cora continued, her voice shaking. 3 parallel lines. Those are war beast claw marks. My family's beasts. My clan did that to you. To a child, you did not do it, Jiwoo said. Her voice was calm, empty of anger. You were not even born yet, but my family did, my clan. The company my parents still run. Cora's fur dimmed almost to darkness, grief written in every line of her body. I researched the contracts. We made millions of credits from that war. Blood money. Money earned from hurting children. Jiwoo picked up her utensils again and continued eating. What will you do with this knowledge? I do not know, Cora admitted. How do I face my family? How do I look at my parents and ask them about this? How do I continue their business knowing what it did? Those are questions only you can answer, Jiwoo said. Before Cora could respond, a commotion near the cafeteria entrance drew their attention. Rix Allen, the large Kreth student who had complained about Jiwoo's armor, stood in the doorway. His gray skin had gone pale, almost white. He looked like he had not slept. His forearms hung at his sides, trembling slightly. He walked directly to Jiwoo's table. Every student in the cafeteria stopped talking and watched. The silence spread like water across stone, until the only sound was Rix Allen's heavy footsteps. When he reached Jiwoo's table, he did something no one expected. He dropped to his knees. All four arms spread wide in front of him, his head bowed until his forehead touched the floor. It was a gesture of deepest remorse in Kreth culture, reserved for the most serious apologies. "I researched my family's military history," Rix Allen said, his voice muffled against the floor. "I found records. My grandfather commanded the 3rd Division of the Kreth Exploration Force, the division that invaded a coastal city called Busan on Earth, the division that killed 200,000 humans in the first week." Jiwoo sat very still. The cafeteria remained silent. "I came from a military family," Rix Allen continued. "I was proud of my grandfather. He died 10 years ago and we honored him as a hero, but he was not a hero. He was a murderer. He killed children. He may have killed your brother." "He did not kill Minho," Jiwoo said quietly. "Minho died 6 years ago from injuries, not during the invasion itself." "Then he killed others," Rix Allen said. "He killed hundreds of others. Children, families, civilians who did nothing except exist on a planet my people wanted to take." He remained on the floor, not moving. "I cannot undo what my family did. I cannot bring back the dead. I cannot heal your scars. But I acknowledge what happened. I acknowledge the truth. I acknowledge that my family's honor was built on innocent blood." Jiwoo looked down at him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice carrying through the silent cafeteria. "Stand up, Rix Allen." He looked up, confused. "Stand up," she repeated. "I am not your judge. Your family did terrible things, yes. But you did not do them. You did not choose your grandfather's actions. What matters is what you choose to do now that you know the truth." Rix Allen stood slowly, his forearms still trembling. "What should I do?" "That is your decision," Jiwoo said. "But making that gesture here in front of everyone is a start. Acknowledging the truth publicly instead of hiding it, that means something." She turned back to her food, the conversation clearly over from her perspective. Rix Allen stood there for another moment, then walked away slowly. The cafeteria remained quiet for several minutes before conversations gradually started again, hushed and subdued. Cora looked at Jiwoo with something like awe. "How are you so calm? How are you not angry?" "I am angry," Jiwoo said simply. "I have been angry for 15 years. But anger does not change the past. Action changes the future." She finished her meal and stood up. "If you want to do something meaningful, Cora, do not just feel guilty. Change things. Stop your clan from doing to another species what they did to mine." Later that day, word spread across campus faster than wildfire. Takesh had not just shared documents with a few students. He had uploaded the declassified military reports to a student forum, available for anyone to read. Records of the invasion, casualty lists, after-action reports from Kreth commanders describing the unexpected resistance they faced. Vryn mercenary logs calling humans insanely determined prey. Medical reports from Kreth field hospitals describing injuries their soldiers sustained fighting human civilians armed with primitive weapons. The truth was out, and it spread through the academy like a virus. Students read the documents in horror. Teachers tried to shut down the forum, but copies had already been made and shared. Within hours, students from 50 different species were reading about something their governments had hidden from them. Kreth student found her family's military division in the reports and broke down crying in the library. A Vryn student discovered his grandfather had piloted ships that bombed human cities and stopped attending classes. A Talxir student realized her people's neutrality meant standing by while genocide happened and wrote an angry essay that went viral on Student Networks. Professor Velthera called an emergency faculty meeting. Professor Daewon, one of only 3 human instructors at the academy, attended. He was older than Jiwoo, maybe 50 years old, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. He dressed in civilian clothes always, but after the document spread, students started looking at him differently, wondering what scars he hid under his neat suits. "The administration wants us to suppress this information," Velthera said at the meeting. her crystal body flashing angry red. They say it threatens decades of diplomatic progress. They want us to tell students the documents are faked or exaggerated. Then the administration can go to hell, Daewon said calmly. He stood up and pulled off his jacket, then unbuttoned his shirt. Underneath, his torso was covered in scars. Burn marks, puncture wounds, surgical scars. I was 16 when the invasion happened. I survived. Most of my family did not. I came to this academy to teach the next generation how to prevent war, not to perpetuate lies about wars that already happened. He buttoned his shirt back up and put his jacket on. I will not tell my students to ignore the truth. If the administration has a problem with that, they can fire me. Velthara was silent. Then her colors shifted to somber blue. I taught that it was a minor misunderstanding. I taught the lie for 15 years. I knew pieces of the truth but chose not to look deeper because it was easier. I am ashamed. Then teach the truth now, Daewon said. That is all any of us can do. By evening, a student protest had formed in the central plaza. More than 300 students from dozens of species held signs made from spare data pads and poster boards. Teach truth, not propaganda. How many other wars were erased? Peace built on lies is not peace. Jiwoo watched from her dormitory window, 4 floors up. She did not join the protest. She had not asked for any of this. She had just wanted to attend class, learn diplomacy, and maybe help prevent another invasion somewhere else in the galaxy. But the truth was out now, and there was no putting it back. Her datapad chimed. A message from Takesh. I am sorry if I made things difficult for you. But thank you for giving me permission to share. Things are changing, Jiwoo typed a simple response. Things needed to change. She looked back out the window at the protesters below, at students from species whose governments had hidden or participated in the invasion. They were learning that history was not clean, that peace was complicated, that their heroes might be someone else's monsters. It was a hard lesson. But it was an important one. In her hand, she held the photo of her and Minho, 2 children smiling before the world ended. She pressed it against the window like she was showing him the protest below. They are listening, Minho, she whispered. Finally, they are listening. The protest lasted for 3 days. Students camped in the central plaza with sleeping bags and food brought from the cafeteria. They took turns holding signs and giving speeches about truth and accountability. Campus security did not break up the protest because half of the security staff were students themselves who agreed with the cause. On the morning of the 4th day, the academy administration announced a forum. All students and faculty were invited to attend a discussion about curriculum changes and historical accuracy. The announcement tried to sound neutral, but everyone knew what it really meant. The administration was being forced to respond to the pressure. The forum was held in the largest lecture hall on campus, a massive room that could hold 800 people. Every seat was filled. Students sat in the aisles. Faculty stood against the walls. Jiwoo sat in the back row, still wearing her armor, trying to be invisible. It did not work. People kept glancing at her, the human who had started all of this by simply taking off her protective gear. Chancellor Vexthon, the head of the academy, stood at the podium. He was a Kreth, old and covered in ceremonial markings that showed his status. His forearms gestured as he spoke, trying to calm the crowd. We have heard the concerns of our student body, Vexthon said, his deep voice echoing through the hall. The academy has always been committed to truth and education. We will be reviewing our historical curriculum to ensure accuracy and completeness. That is not good enough, a voice called out. It was Hana, another human student younger than Jiwoo, maybe 20 years old. She stood up from her seat in the middle section. Reviewing is not the same as fixing. We need mandatory courses on the real history of Earth's integration. We need survivor testimonies. We need accountability. Other students started standing up, voicing agreement. The forum quickly became chaotic, with multiple people trying to talk at once. Chancellor Vexthon tried to restore order, but his voice was drowned out. Professor Daewon walked to the podium and stood beside the chancellor. The room quieted somewhat. Daewon had become a symbol in the past few days, the teacher who had revealed his own scars and refused to teach lies. The administration is embarrassed, Daewon said bluntly. They are embarrassed that this information got out. They are embarrassed that students had to discover the truth on their own instead of being taught it. But embarrassment is not the same as understanding. We need structural change, not just promises to review things. What do you suggest, Professor? Chancellor Vexthon asked, his voice strained. Mandatory courses on the true history of every species' integration into the galactic community, Day One said. Not just Earth, every species. How many other peaceful integrations were actually invasions or forced submissions? Let us find out. Let us teach the whole truth, not the sanitized version. That would require massive curriculum changes, Vexthon protested. Then make massive curriculum changes, Day One said. This is an academy. We are supposed to pursue truth, not convenience. The forum continued for 3 hours. Students presented research they had done on their own species' histories, finding gaps and inconsistencies in official records. Faculty members argued about academic freedom versus diplomatic sensitivity. It was messy and uncomfortable and necessary. Finally, Chancellor Vexthon agreed to form a committee that would include students, faculty, and outside historians. They would review all historical curricula and make recommendations. It was not everything the protesters wanted, but it was a start. As the forum ended and people filed out, Jiwoo tried to slip away unnoticed. She failed. A small group of students approached her in the hallway outside the lecture hall. "We wanted to thank you," said a Talxir student whose name Jiwoo did not know. "If you had not shown us your scars, if you had not been brave enough to tell the truth, none of this would have happened." "I was not trying to be brave," Jiwoo said uncomfortably. "I was just told to take off my armor." "But you did it," Hana said, stepping forward from the group. "You could have refused. You could have taken academic probation, but you showed us what really happened, and that changed everything." Jiwoo wanted to leave to go back to her room and be alone. But these students were looking at her with something like hope, and she remembered what it felt like to have no hope at all. So she stayed and talked with them for a few minutes, answering basic questions about the invasion, about survival, about moving forward. When she finally made it back to her dormitory, she found someone waiting outside her door. Cora sat on the floor in the hallway, her luminescent fur dim, her ears flat against her head. "I contacted my family," Cora said without standing up. "I asked them about the Earth contract. My mother said it was just business. My father said they were following legal contracts with the Kreth Empire. They said I was being emotional and naive. Are you?" Jiwoo asked, unlocking her door. "No," Cora said firmly. "I am being moral. There is a difference between legal and right." She finally stood up, meeting Jiwoo's eyes. "I am leaving my family's company. I am going to work with Vryn mercenary reform movements, organizations trying to end the practice of selling military services to anyone who pays. It will take years, maybe decades, but I have to try." "That will be difficult," Jiwoo said. "Your family will not forgive you easily." "I know," Cora said. "But I cannot look at myself if I do nothing. You survived what my people did to you, and you are here, trying to make things better. The least I can do is try to stop it from happening again." Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. Then she did something she rarely did. She reached out and put a hand on Cora's shoulder. "Good luck." "I mean that." Cora's fur brightened slightly, the Vryn expression of gratitude. "Thank you. For everything. For showing us the truth even when it hurt." After Cora left, Jiwoo entered her room and closed the door. She stood in the dark for a moment, then turned on the lights. Her room was small and simple. A bed, a desk, a storage unit for her armor. On the desk sat the photo of her and Minho, and beside it, a new message on her datapad. It was from Rix Allen. "I am leaving the academy. Not because of shame, though I feel plenty of that, but because I realized I do not want to be a diplomat who maintains the current system. I want to be an investigator who exposes the truths that systems try to hide. I am going to document war crimes and advocate for truth commissions. I do not expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that you changed my life." "Thank you." Jiwoo read the message twice, then saved it. She did not reply. She did not need to. Rix Allen was making his own choices now, and that was what mattered. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift at the academy. The committee was formed, and they began serious work. Professor Velthara personally apologized to Jiwoo. Not in private, but in front of the entire diplomatic studies class. She admitted she had been wrong to demand Jiwoo remove her armor, without understanding why she wore it. She admitted she had taught comfortable lies instead of difficult truths. "I have been teaching for 30 years, Velthara said, her crystal body shifting through colors of shame and determination. "I thought I was building peace. But peace built on hidden suffering is not real peace. It is just delayed conflict. I am sorry I did not see that sooner. The Academy announced that next semester would include a new, mandatory course called True History of Galactic Integration. They were bringing in survivor testimonies from multiple species, not just humans. A historian named Lee Sora, who had survived the invasion and spent 15 years documenting it, would become a permanent faculty member. Jiwoo still wore her armor to most classes, but now sometimes she did not. Not because anyone told her to, but because she chose not to. And when she did wear it, no one complained. Some students had even started wearing small symbols of their own people's struggles, small reminders that everyone had pain in their history. One evening, Jiwoo received a message from Takesh. They are building a memorial in the central plaza. To those who survive, it will list all species who suffered suppressed atrocities. Humans will be listed, but so will others. Would you like to be there when they unveil it? Jiwoo thought about it for a long time. Then she typed a simple response. No. Memorials are for the living to feel better. I would rather see action than monuments. Takesh replied quickly. I understand. But action is happening too. Because of you. Jiwoo looked at the photo of her and Minho on her desk. Two children who had been happy once before everything fell apart. She picked it up and held it carefully. Things are changing, Minho, she whispered to the photo. Slowly, but they are changing. People are learning. They are listening. They are trying to do better. Outside her window, she could see the central plaza where the memorial was being constructed. Students walked past it every day, stopping to read the names of species and conflicts that had been erased from official history. It was not justice. It was not enough. But it was something. And sometimes Jiwoo thought something was better than nothing. 3 years passed. The Galactic Academy looked the same from the outside, but everything inside had changed. The curriculum now included mandatory courses on true historical integration, taught by survivors and historians who refused to sanitize the past. Professor Lee Sora taught packed classrooms about the invasion, about resistance, about the cost of survival. Students who once learned sanitized versions of history now learned about blood and fire and the ways governments lie to make themselves look better. Jiwoo was in her final semester, preparing for graduation. She had finished her advanced degree in interstellar conflict resolution and had already received 3 job offers from organizations that worked with post-conflict worlds. She sat in her room, now decorated with more than just a photo of Minho, reading through the offers and trying to decide which path to take. Her datapad chimed. A message from the Dean of Students. The graduating class has voted. They want you to give the valedictorian speech. Please accept. Jiwoo stared at the message for a long time. She did not want to give a speech. She did not want to stand in front of thousands of people and be a symbol. She just wanted to graduate, take a job, and help people. But she remembered standing in that classroom 3 years ago, removing her armor, showing her scars. She had not wanted to do that either, but it had mattered. She typed a response. I accept. The graduation ceremony was held in the main plaza, where the memorial to suppressed atrocities now stood as a permanent reminder. Families came from across the galaxy to watch their children graduate. Jiwoo's parents came too. Her mother, Kim Soyeon, and her father, Park Junho, both survivors who still had nightmares about the invasion. Her mother carried a small frame with Minho's photo, placing it on the seat next to her like he was there watching too. When it was time for the valedictorian speech, Jiwoo walked to the podium wearing her armor, polished but still bearing the scratches and marks of years of use. The crowd fell silent. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone knew what her armor represented. 3 years ago, Jiwoo began, her voice steady and clear through the amplification system. I was told to remove my armor in class. When I did, you saw scars. Those scars told a story that the galaxy tried to erase. A story of 340 million humans who died in an invasion that official records called a misunderstanding. She paused, looking out at the crowd, thousands of faces from hundreds of species all watching her. But this speech is not about me, she continued. It is not about my scars or my brother or my survival. This is about what we learned when the truth came out. We learned that Earth was not the only world whose suffering was hidden. We learned that comfortable history is often built on uncomfortable truth. We learned that peace without acknowledgement is just silence pretending to be harmony. In the crowd she could see former classmates, Takesh, who now worked as an independent historian documenting hidden conflicts. Cora, who had been disowned by her family but had helped shut down 3 Vrin mercenary companies through legal reform. Hana, who was starting a job at a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. When I came to this academy, Jiwoo said, I wore armor because I was afraid. Afraid that if I was not protected, I would be hurt again. Afraid that if I showed weakness, I would be destroyed. That fear came from experience. It came from watching my world burn and my brother die slowly from wounds that should have been prevented. Her mother in the crowd wiped tears from her eyes. Her father sat perfectly still, his hand on the photo of Minho. But fear is not the same as wisdom, Jiwoo continued, and protection is not the same as isolation. Over these 3 years, I learned that showing my scars was not weakness. It was truth. And truth, no matter how painful, is the only foundation on which real peace can be built. She looked down at her notes, then looked back up and spoke without them. My brother Minho died when he was 12 years old. He died from injuries he got when he was 6, fighting to survive an invasion that should never have happened. He did not get to grow up. He did not get to come to this academy. He did not get to see the changes that his death and 340 million other deaths eventually caused. Her voice did not shake, but emotion filled every word. So this speech is for him, and for all the others who did not survive to see their suffering acknowledged. This is for the Talxir civilians who were displaced in the border wars that official records do not mention. This is for the Vrin colonies that were abandoned during the Great Expansion. This is for every species whose pain was deemed inconvenient to galactic politics. The crowd was completely silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Peace is not the absence of conflict, Jiwoo said. Peace is not forgetting what happened. Peace is not covering up atrocities with diplomatic language. Real peace requires truth. It requires acknowledgement. It requires looking at the scars, physical and historical, and saying this happened, this was wrong, and we will do better. She paused, then said the words that would become famous, repeated in political speeches and written in textbooks across the galaxy. Peace built on lies is not peace. It is just waiting for the next invasion. We survived because we refused to forget, to not let our suffering become comfortable history. The silence lasted for 3 full seconds after she finished. Then the applause began, starting slowly and building until it filled the entire plaza. Students stood. Faculty stood. Parents stood. Even Chancellor Vexthon, who had initially tried to suppress the truth, stood and applauded. Jiwoo walked back to her seat. She did not smile. She had said what needed to be said, and now it was done. After the ceremony, her parents met her outside the main building. Her mother hugged her tightly, and her father put his hand on her shoulder, the way he used to do when she was a child. Minho would be proud, her mother said quietly. I know, Jiwoo said, and she believed it. 10 years passed after graduation. Jiwoo took a job as a mediator for post-conflict worlds, traveling to places where wars had just ended and helping survivors begin the process of healing. She wore her armor sometimes, now more ceremonial than protective, a reminder of where she came from and why her work mattered. The Galactic Council, under pressure from a new generation educated at academies across the galaxy, began formal reconciliation processes. The Kreth Empire issued an official apology to Earth and opened its military archives for historians to examine. Vrin mercenary companies were heavily regulated, and several were shut down entirely. Truth commissions were established for a dozen different conflicts that had been hidden or minimized. It was not perfect. Some governments still resisted. Some histories were still contested. Some survivors never got the acknowledgement they deserved. But things were better than they had been, and that mattered. Jiwoo stood in her small apartment on a space station between stars, looking at the photo of her and Minho that she still carried everywhere. She was 34 years old now, older than Minho would ever be. Her scars were still there, faded slightly but never disappearing. Her armor hung in the closet, waiting for the next time she needed it. Her datapad showed a news article. The human standard had become official terminology in galactic diplomacy. It meant 3 things: the right of survival to be acknowledged, the refusal to let suffering be sanitized, the insistence that peace requires truth. She had not meant to create a standard. She had just meant to survive, to honor her brother, to tell the truth when lies became too heavy to carry. But somehow that had been enough to start something bigger than herself. A message arrived from Takesh. New assignment on the Outer Rim. 3 species trying to negotiate peace after 20 years of conflict. They asked for you specifically. They want someone who understands that peace is hard. Interested? Jiwoo looked at the message, then at Minho's photo. She touched the glass gently, the way she had done 1,000 times before. I have to go to work, Minho, she said quietly. More people need help. More truth needs to be told. More peace needs to be built the right way. She picked up her armor and began putting it on piece by piece, each movement practiced and smooth. The shoulder guards that protected her burn scar. The arm guards that covered the claw marks. The chest plate that hid the surgical scar. Not because she was afraid now, but because the armor had become part of her story. Part of how she honored the past while working toward a better future. She typed a response to Takesh. When do I leave? Tomorrow, he replied. I will be ready, she sent back. She looked around her small apartment at the few belongings she kept. The photo of Minho always packed first, her armor cleaned and maintained. A small collection of stones from different worlds, each one representing a place where she had helped survivors begin to heal. This was her life now, moving between conflicts, telling truth, building peace the hard way. It was not the life she would have chosen if the invasion had never happened. But the invasion did happen and she had survived, and now she used that survival to help others. That was enough. That had to be enough. Outside her window, ships moved between stars, carrying people to new worlds and new futures. The galaxy was vast and complicated and full of old wounds that still needed healing. But it was also full of people like Takesh, like Korra, like Rixalan, like Hana, who were trying to do better, who were choosing truth over comfort.